Hip hop is 50, and we're still celebrating this cultural phenomenon. On this episode of Brooklyn Savvy, we're hopping in this spiritual cipher, peeling back the layers of the intersection of hip hop and the church with some of its pioneering dancers. We have a clip from Spiritual Cyphers, Hip Hop and the Church, a documentary by filmmaker Ariyan Johnson. Let's take a look.
Can you feel it? The feel and pulse of my city? The rhythm and heart for me has always been filtered through hip hop.
People thought it was having a bad influence on these, well-to-do, good Christian young people.
Most black preachers that I know, their highest hope was to please white people.
Let me tell you about my two loves, hip hop and the church.
I wanted to create a safe space to have uncomfortable yet transformative conversations that move people, amplifying the voices of those who are underrepresented and who inspire positive change. I'm Tony Williams, and this is Brooklyn Savvy. We're in the 50th anniversary of hip hop, but I don't think I've seen enough conversations about the women that were in hip hop. So on this episode of Brooklyn Savvy, that's what we're going to be diving into. And what really inspired me was this movie that I watched, and it was Hip Hop and the Church. And every time I see it, I'm filled with an inspiration and a joy. It's right, a joy, Ariyan, with your story and how you managed to blend the two. So talk to us. I love the way you start the movie. You said, I have two loves.
Yes.
God and hip hop.
That's right.
So talk to us about that.
I'm sure the mothers at the church are clutching their pearls. But I'm sure they love jazz, right? Mm-hmm. I'm sure they love blues. And so the continuum, it continues, right? Mm-hmm. The heritage continues. And so hip hop precedes, what it is now, but before that was jazz, right? So we're just young people doing what we do. And so what it is hip hop. And you were sort of made that you had to make a choice.
And you're a pioneer, ladies.
Yes,
I know.
We're at the age where should we admit it? But I mean, like if you look back on it, you're talking about like Latifah's first video. I was in it, so you have to start to make the confessions. Yes, ladies.
Hello, right? Hip hop is me, and I am hip hop.
It is. It's the 50th anniversary, 2023. So it is a global phenomenon, and hip hop is the only cultural sort of art form that embraces all cultures and allows you your autonomy and welcomes you into the fold because it's a culture, and it allows you to do it in Germany, it allows you to do it in Asia, it allows you to do it in Japan and Africa. It embraces all, but you are still very specific in the genre. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It embraces and it informs and it educates and it celebrates and it is a unifier. And no one looks at hip hop as a unifier because they make a lot of money.
Right.
And there's a lot of money in division also, but hip hop makes a lot of money.
So what was the dichotomy from what you were describing to me?
Yeah.
It sounds like that it was positive.
Yes, I mean my experience with hip hop, and you have my ladies here that I dance with, Citra and Sansa.
And that's what people need to know. You're a dancer. You're a dancer.
I'm a dancer.
Right.
I am a dancer. Always will be. And so it was positive. I mean, I think there are all kinds of facets of hip hop, right? And there is, there was not in the 90s, the LA brought in the gangster rap, and we Native Tongues, which is a Tribe Called Quest, Latifah, and Jungle Brothers. There are all these different segments within hip hop. I think people focus on negative.
Right.
Yeah.
That's what we hear. You, Kathleen, you wanted to insert?
Oh no. I just appreciate that, because when we see something in the negative, we keep it in the negative. and it will never be allowed to come out of that category. And that's not fair.
Not at all. Now, you two ladies, you were the dancers, you as well. Talk to us about what it was like back in the day. C-Trip, why don't you share some of that with us?
Yeah, back in the day, it was.
How about that? Back in the
day.
day.
Which was like only 2 years ago. I don't know,
Come on now, come on.
Yes, brilliant. But we had so much fun. We were new. There was no blueprint. We didn't realize that we were the blueprint at the time. We were being shaped and molded into like history. I had absolutely no idea. I'm sure you didn't have any idea, but we had such a good time. A lot of us came from, school, straight out of school, and you were dancing with your friends, and it was just word of mouth. There was social media wasn't a thing. Oh, come down to this audition. They're hiring such and such, and you bring your friend and you go and you audition. The next thing you know, you're on a video set. Started out in the clubs, going to hip hop clubs. Then you're on a set. Then it was about developing relationships, and you went from one video set to the next one to the next one, and we had such a
Who was there to
beautiful
protect you?
time.
Or did you need protection? Because, it's all male dominated.
No, it's a community.
It was a community.
Yeah,
It
right.
was. Hip hop it's a social,
Yes.
cultural thing. It's an exchange. So it's a community. And I think people forget it's community. So you don't need to be protected within your own community. So I think when you start changing the venue, because now, there isn't really a place for people to communicate in a community setting. Hip hop now is on, it's going to be in the Olympics. So now they take a segment out of culture, the dance, and now we have a competition out of it, Whereas all of these things, the DJ, the MC, the graffiti, which is the artwork, the swag, the clothes, where you have the dance, the B-girl, the B-boy, who are dancing between the songs, the vocals of the song, the break girls, break boys. We have these elements, knowledge. All of these elements are about the culture. So when you start segregating the things from the culture as a whole, then you get these distortments that happen.
But I'm thinking about misogyny in some of the lyrics and because not all hip hop is the same. I get that piece.
But when we started,
when
we were beautiful. When we started
pure.
the song, was
Brooklyn,
not the songs about our beautiful? we were queens,
Right.
The bees and the stuff came a little after us. And I think when we were dancing, and let me know if it's true for you, I think rump shaker, 1, 2, 3, that changed our trajectory.
What do you mean, your rumps were shaking? No, just
No, because
cool.
that was like
Excellent.
maybe
Right.
mid-90s, right? Where now we're
I hear
changing.
1994. Sometimes, I don't know whether, but anyway, but mid-90s, you said it.
Well,
right.
because I don't have it right.
I'm
Sure.
good. No,
Please
that's all right.
put it right
No,
here,
but-
okay? When you find it,
you
all
said to me
right,
last
put it
time.
right here. But I think when you think about the change, because when we danced, we had baggy clothes, right? It was cross colors.
Combat boots.
It's combat boots. We didn't
Walk aware.
sneakers. Huh, we didn't even know sneakers, right? That was what we wore, right? So the changes happen when you when the money comes, right? And then there are more people outside of community in charge, and then they want to see what they want to see, right? And so now we put different men in charge, and we get a different male fantasy of what things are. Right? So the less women you have in front and behind the camera, you will see differences.
Absolutely. Oh, absolutely. The more diversity and inclusion.
Yes.
And so I wanted to also talk about the whole church girl piece. Sunsaray, why don't you speak to us about that piece of, being in hip hop and still feeling like there's a dichotomy between
Right.
church and hip hop, even back then.
Right.
Because that's what the movie's about, right? Yes.
And it is a difference. It's a huge difference. And for me, church was very important. It was something that we did every day, right? Bible study, midweek, choir rehearsal, all of that. Right. And but my parents also knew that I was still young. And they also knew that, there's another element, and just to be wanted to nurture your daughter and wanted to nurture your kids in a way where you can still do this, but there's a time and place for everything, right? And that was their big thing. There's a time and place for everything. You can go and dance. I went even as far to ask my pastor, like, hey, I'm 16, I'm doing hip hop, I'm about to go on tour. And he let me know that it was okay, but there's a time and place for everything. And will you do that in my church or in our church? No, but you can still respect yourself, be mindful of what you're doing and where you are, and still be aware of your faith and your God, and still be able to do what you love, because he was all like, well, God put that in you, you're not hurting anyone. You have ability to make people happy, so my faith was okay. And because we were closed, like our bodies were fully covered.
In the movie, you talk about how grueling the work was.
Oh yeah.
Right, and how you had to get like a hip replacement.
12 hours, 16 hours a day. Now, we're more educated on what to do with our bodies, right? But dancing for 16 hours a day, hitch kicks, on
the pavement. So the environmental factors contribute to injury.
Yeah.
Right? So I just did a conference at the International Association of Dance Medicine Science and talked about hip hop injuries, preventions, and wellness, but the environmental factors are concrete, are pavement, right? Are these things, and back in our day, we didn't dance to sneakers, you know what I mean? What is that, And so those things do contribute to injury. But there hasn't been any study done on any pioneers and how those injuries come up later on in life. The studies that I've seen have been of other people who aren't in the African diaspora getting injured, and that's my opinion, is because they don't know how to center. That it's a grounded art form, right? And so if you're in a Eurocentric idea of movement and body consciousness, your center is different.
Yeah.
So
Speak to that, Dr. Turner? Yeah.
Well, what she's explaining is that there's a sense with any sort of movement that those of us from the African diaspora did, grounded. There was a sense of elevation, but there was also a sense of groundedness. And so one of the things, especially with even early dance and the church, was when they came over during the antebellum South, where they weren't even allowed to really even do any sort of church outside of what was created as church for them, which kept them you're only going to learn this, and you're going to be a slave, and that's what this is. But they were able to go and have the praise house. And the praise house for the slaves were off to the side because noise came out of it. Music came out of it. It was word, it was song, it was movement, and it was music. And they were able to create, and one of the things that was so fabulous about this, because they were hearing about the Exodus and the God of the slaves. Come on now. The God of the slaves. They were able to relate to that, and that's where the Negro spirituals came from. They were created in these praise houses. And so with that, you would have the old season. They would be playing, singing, humming. And then you would have the people, and it wasn't about not dancing. It was about being involved in worship. But there were certain things you could not do. You could not jump, you couldn't lift up, because that was seen as dancing. So they kept very low to the ground. The feet never left the floor, but they would be in response to what was being sung. And so the movement, children, male, female, so this was everybody, all were able to get in here, and they were able to respond for hours because they had to let out what had been kept inside, frustration, the whips, the just being demoralized, all of that. And so that's where the Negro spirituals came from. That's where the whole understanding of call and response came
And
from.
so when she's saying this, I'm thinking about hip hop.
Come on now.
She just described hip hop.
Come on.
Out of resistance and struggle in New York, they had no money. They go outside on concrete, on with a cardboard paper, and they go ahead. They
Come
bring
on.
their music. They hook it up to the light fixture at the street light, and then we have a block party. And you see all the elements: the DJ, the MC, the dancers, the graffiti. All of these things come together out of the need for community, the need to come out and express yourself and be together. That's what I heard.
That was
sorry.
fabulous. No, don't be apologizing. When you talk about your relationship with Jesus Christ, right? Because that how did you combine that with secular? Because hip hop or was yes, hip hop was secular.
Well, see, Jesus, right? He wasn't. But Jesus didn't stay with the Pharisees.
No.
He didn't stay with the Pharisees.
He went out to the
Jesus
people.
went
Right.
out. He
He
was at
did.
the party. He turned the water into wine.
Yes, he did.
What Jesus are we talking about?
Thank you.
That why am I here to stay and encourage the church members? You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like, I'm supposed to go out in the world, and God gives me gifts, and He gives me a call and a purpose so that I can affect and impact in some way. You know what I mean? And
Absolutely.
so if you don't use what God gives you, then I don't want to
That's
stand
called
before
burying
Him.
your talents.
What? Go
That's
ahead,
what
preach.
it
Oh,
is.
let me pick
Girl,
up that
girl,
word.
you know,
What?
you know.
Oh, yes. Yeah, you don't even think about it in terms of separation. You just think you gotta be you. I'm me. Citra, Sunsaray, we were still church girls on tour. So afterwards, I wouldn't go to the after parties, you know what I'm saying? But I was like, you don't pay me to go to after parties. You pay me just to dance on the tour. You can't make me go to your whack little after party. I don't have to date nobody on the tour because you dating somebody on the tour. So there's standards, and I wasn't liked. You know, there's one particular artist. I'm not gonna talk about
We're not
the
gonna
group,
talk about it.
right? Bless their
No
hearts.
gossip, no gossip, no
We're
gossip.
not, it ain't gossip, but it's truth, right?
Right.
But it's my truth, right? It's not gossip.
It's true.
But love covers a multitude of sins, and I'm not going to disclose. But what I'm going to say is, you do have opposition. It's not always, like, oh, that's wonderful. Why don't you drink? Because I don't want to. You know what I mean? So it doesn't change. The pressure is the pressure, but you're pressed everywhere you go.
That's true. That's so true. So in talking about the work that you're in now, Citra, are you still involved in hip? How do you still relate to hip hop? You're not dancing, or are you? You're not dancing. And
But tell her how you grew from that, because she
yes,
also
I
went
wanna
to
hear.
singing.
Yeah.
She was doing Bad Boys. Let me be quiet.
Yeah.
She sung backup for Justin Timberlake.
I wanna
this
hear.
shit is for real. I'll sit here.
you say it.
It's not my show.
It is today. I like it.
So I started out as a dancer, and then 2000. I'm sorry. 2000, I transitioned from a background dancer to a background vocalist, because growing up in the church, well, from when I was a little girl, I always danced, and I was a singer. I come from a family of everyone's in ministry. Someone plays an instrument. You're singing in a choir. I was always involved, so it was just something that, that was just always in me. So I made the transition from a dancer, because after a certain amount of years, I got a little like, it's a little hard on me. It's like hard on my body. I'm just like, And because I had such a passion for singing, that's when I said, you know what? I'm gonna take a break, switch over. That is what I did. I got a call, and the same artist, Puffy, that I was once a dancer for, and some of his artists on Uptown Bad Boy
Mary
Records.
J.
Yeah. Because I
Drop
used to
the names,
dance. I'm
pumpkin.
sorry. I was a background dancer for Mary J. Blige, and I was on her What's the 411 tour.
She brought me in. We did
Yeah.
Mary together. Go ahead.
So, and those years were like the roughest years. It was very challenging because that was like the beginning of Uptown Records. Like, so all of the things that you
struggle,
hear
right,
about
all
now,
that.
we were a part of that, but it was still beautiful. It was still beautiful. And, you know, so here it is. Now I'm a background vocalist, now singing for the artists that I used to dance,
I see.
you know,
Right.
for, and it was like, wow, so interesting. So when I walked in one day to one rehearsal, and the dancers were there, the singers were there, and Puffy looked at me, he was confused, like he didn't know. And I said, and I got behind the mic, and he was like, what?
I didn't know.
Last I saw it, you know, and then so singing with him, singing Faith Evans, singing with Carl Thomas, and then, you know, a lot of in between, Ciara, Justin Timberlake, and the list goes on. And it was such a blessing. But it was, like I said, it was just a beautiful experience. And
Excellent.
Excellent. Yeah. I
And
just
hip
loved
hop
it.
did that.
Yeah.
You understand what I'm saying? So
Yeah. Right.
hip hop gave us money. You understand? So your other segment, we're talking about how the disenfranchisement of African American women, right? At first, we were working, right? We were always tithing. You know what I mean? So
Tithing.
so money
good.
keeps coming back. You know what I mean? We are
Well,
giving.
tithing makes money come back in its own way.
Right.
It's
So
a-
we're
right.
giving to the church not only in
Right.
our gifts, right,
Right.
but also in our monetary,
Right,
right?
right.
So it is interesting how we need to look at hip hop in all facets, not just predominantly what you hear, because that is controlled by the structures that want to keep the African diaspora in a different light, right? So you won't get a record deal or something if it is very positive, right? So
You said you won't get a record deal?
no, at one time you wouldn't, right? And you know, so when we start shifting from, like when we started, you know, it was, you know, Queens, and it was, we were beautiful. There was even a song that celebrated our behinds. Remember that? You know what I mean? Baby got. Right. So, but it wasn't necessarily derogatory in terms of how derogatory things are now, right? So there was a celebration of being us that changed, because when people see us empowered, then they begin to start chipping away with this. How can we start now making it more, like you said, more manageable for us to control, to continue to enslave in a way, and to keep us, you know, recycling instead of moving forward.
What keeps you all aware? Meaning, because that creates an
The Holy
awareness, what you
Spirit.
just said.
God
The
is
Holy
God.
Spirit.
Yeah.
God is God.
Yes.
Yeah.
God is Godding. If you don't know God is still Godding,
God is
He
Godding.
is
God,
Godding.
right, just like life is life and
Come
God
on.
is God.
Life is
Come on.
lifing, but God is Godding, okay?
And what does God is Godding mean to you? I'm
Man.
like, what does that look like when God is Godding?
He, you know, so there's a stillness in releasing me. And Len, what do you want me to say? How do you want me to respond? Because my flesh would want to do something else, but how is that going to progress? How is that going to heal? How is that going to celebrate? How do I do this for your glory? And sometimes it doesn't look like I think it's going to look. You know, my life wasn't something that I planned. I'm just a girl from Brooklyn. Bed-Stuy. You know what I mean? How God manifested in my life, how I met you. Dance ministry was my solid.
Can you share a little bit about dance ministry? I'd just like to hear
Yeah,
more
so
about
this
that.
woman here, I had to go to her for some mentorship, right? Because anybody that know church people, you know church people. That's all I'm gonna say. That's all I'm gonna say, because the church is a hospital.
Yes.
Right? So
There's some sweet people in there.
in some ways you need I am, wisdom. Wisdom is the thing, and all you're getting, get understanding, right? So if I don't know a thing, I'm going to, I need to know. I don't have no ego attached. I'm humble
right.
because it's a necessity for me to live and to survive and to thrive. I don't know what I'm doing. Hey, lady. Hey, you might not know me, and you did not know me.
And I didn't know you.
But I need some help.
And yet, when you were saying God has got it, God really, when God orders your steps.
Thank you.
Come on now, talk to me,
Yes,
somebody.
yes,
When
order.
God orders your steps, you're thinking that it's going to be wonderful, smooth sailing.
Right.
But back in 1978, and I'm a trained dancer, and my mother and I joined the church, and I was listening to your testimony and how you said your pastor said, now you're not going to bring it in here, but you could do it out there. Right. And that's what it was. There was only a certain kind of movement that we saw in the black church, right. Wow. And that was a shout. But when God moved my mother and I to a place where the new pastor, Reverend Dr. Floyd Harold Flake, praise the Lord, Greater Aller Cathedral of New York, amen, praise the Lord. And senior pastor right now is Reverend Dr. Elaine McCollins Flake, amen. But they had just arrived there, and I knew I was a dancer, I was a professional, I trained, I did all of this, but I wasn't getting where I was supposed to be. Mm-hmm. But God said, because I'm not going to send you to the big companies, you're going to start something in my church, but I didn't know that. Mm-hmm. And so when you go, and when God has it, and there was fight, there was pushback, but they said, we want it.
He can shift your heart too. Have you seen that?
And the
happen?
pastors wanted it,
Right.
but the church didn't want it. Mm-hmm. And so when she came and asked, we were doing conferences after years. But even the smallest of movement, hip hop came a whole lot later in the church, yes. A whole lot later, because it had to take its stages. But when God's got you, God's got you.
Oh, absolutely.
And there's a song that I believe Kirk Franklin sings, and he says, you might be the only Jesus that they see today.
That's right.
So I keep that in mind. I don't react, but I just keep that in mind because you don't know what other people are going through. And that smile and that, not pushing back just might be what you need and what they need.
Well, that's all the time we have, but you know what? You gave us a prayer right there. Brooklyn and beyond, we got a prayer right there. Thank you, ladies. Thank you so much for the joy.
Thank you,
that
Tony.
brought.
Thank you.
You brought some joy in here. Hey, hip hop 50. Thank you so much, all of you, and we'll see you next time on Brooklyn Savvy.